Hi, friends. Great to see you as we have people joining on. Wonderful, wonderful. How's everyone doing? Are we all, a lot of us have kiddos and this is the last day of school. How exciting is that? We were discussing, some of us moms on here love summer. They love to have their kiddos home. And then there's others like myself who get a little stir crazy with kids in the house and the heat. So raise your hands. Who, show of hands. Who loves to have their kids home for the summer? And who prefers to have their summers a little bit more free and not be trying to sign everybody up for all the different camps? That is the stress of the camps, the camp shuffle overwhelms me a little bit, but okay, so we'll get started. Alexis Susdorf is joining us today, and she has a client meeting here in a little bit. So we're gonna let her jump off 1 second. If we want to pop Jennifer on, and then okay. So Alexis Susdorf is owner and operator of State 48 Public Affairs with over 12 years of experience as an effective lobbying professional supporting public, private, and nonprofit clients in a variety of subject matters. Alexis is widely known to be tenacious, and her success is largely in part because of her ability to build and maintain strong and constructive bipartisan relationships. And we are so grateful she is on. And I will just let you take it away, Alexis. I didn't even know that about you, that you did other things besides education. I thought education was your one and only subject, but you do lobbying for various matters.
Yeah, awesome. And so honored to be here today. Thanks for having me. So I have been doing kind of public policy work now for quite a while. A few years ago, I decided to start my firm, State 48 Public Affairs. Truly, my background was in that like P20 education realm. So education really is sort of the bread and butter I work off of. But when I launched this firm and sort of started to look at my networks, opportunities came in different spaces, healthcare, water, you name it. And really, I have the foundation, I have the relationships, and I understand the process. So really, it was just getting up to speed on some of the subject matters. But yeah, I absolutely love what I do. I loved the title of your session obvious about lobbyists being evil. Trust me, I know I hear that. I have to explain to my own parents how obvious lobbyists aren't necessarily always evil. Trust me, I work with some
Yeah.
that are more challenging than others and some that are more ethical than others. But at the end of the day, how I boil it down to is my clients and so many people don't have the luxury, the expertise or the interest to sit at the legislature when they're in session. There is just so much volume. There are so many kind of workaround processes. And so really, just like anybody else has an expertise in a place, a lobbyist is that expertise to be that person, the boots on the ground, tracking things, letting clients know when the right time to weigh in, how to effectively communicate. So, while again, there are certainly I work with some, I will name no names, but I work with some that I definitely would put more in a bit of a negative evil light, as you say, evil. But
Okay.
truly, most of us are just down there collecting information, delivering information to clients. And one of the key reasons I launched my firm was to make sure that I'm working on issues that really align with my values and principles. I could have gone and worked for a bigger firm, but at the end of the day, they tell you your portfolio. And for me, I have two boys in the public school system. And I always wanted to make sure that the work that I'm doing at the Capitol is building a better Arizona for them. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's totally true. I want to keep my babies by me forever. And so, really, that is why I launched my firm. And that's always been the guiding kind of value and principle of the work that I do, of the clients that I bring on. I'm really mindful that it's a subject matter that I truly believe in. And just to kind of circle back, K-12 public education has always been the crux of that work.
It's not just SUSD that hires you, correct? There are other school districts.
Correct. So I work with, again, I kind of mentioned the P20 education realm. I work with an organization called the Greater Phoenix Educational Management Council. That's a makeup of 63 school districts, most in the Phoenix area, but there are some members that are sort of outliers, a part of that organization, like Holbrook, Yuma, as an example.
Rebecca
And
asked, what does P20 mean? I don't know what P20 is.
20, sorry. So pre-K through 20. So that early childhood kind of realm. Just for reference, I worked at our state's early childhood department, First Things First, many years back, all the way up to 20. So higher education. So Arizona Western College, as an example, over in Yuma is one of my clients as well. So
Yeah. I
sorry,
wanted to dispel the notion right off the bat that SUSD doesn't pay a full-time lobbyist just on their own by themselves, carrying the brunt of the cost of that. Like it's a shared cost with lots of different.
yeah, so kind of twofold. So every client that I work with has different needs, different knowledge, different interests, different opportunities to weigh in. So the Greater Phoenix Educational Management Council client that I mentioned, that entity is much more of the information gatherer and getting that information out and then letting them know where to weigh in, how to weigh in, all of that effective engagement. So it is a lot less, as an example, a lot less testifying, a lot less meeting with members. I do that, I communicate with staff, I communicate with members, but it's a lot less. The expectation of the organization is that we get the information to the members and they use that to empower themselves to go participate in the dialogue. Scottsdale Unified, I do work directly with them as well in a contractual standpoint. And that work really is much more, here is the bill, here is how it impacts Scottsdale, go fix it, right?
And we have different needs. I do know that there was talks from some board members that we don't see eye to eye with, who thought that we should really eliminate your contract. And Dr. Menzel did a great job of explaining that we have different needs in other districts. And because of that, because of our size, our enrollments and different things, that it was necessary to keep you on contract because there's things that you weren't covering in that other contract that we want. So I'm glad that he fought to keep you on, and then that with the board majority, that was passed, and they were not able to kick you out and remove your contract. But let's just jump right in.
Yeah, bring us up to speed on the news, the big news of the week, which is Prop 123. And for those that aren't familiar, that brings about $300 million into our budget for public schools. And my understanding is the majority Republican legislature wanted to attach what some call a poison pill, where they sort of ratify the voucher expansion into the Constitution as part of accepting the continuation of Prop 123. Katie Hobbs obviously has said that's dead in the water. So what's happening? What happens from now for Prop 123?
Yeah. So just for like quick backgrounds, you all may remember voting back in 2015 on your ballots, the ability to pull from additional state land trust dollars to use for K-12 education. So that was success. It was barely successful back in 2015. It passed just over the necessary votes. And that was, in effect for 10 years. And so we're getting up to the sunset of the ability to use those funds June 30th of this year.
What's that dollar amount again?
300
million.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are but the caveat was back in 2015, the whole reason this came about under the Ducey administration was to settle a lawsuit that was in effect. A lawsuit basically saying the legislature wasn't filling their constitutional duty to fund education at inflationary adjustments. And so, the
reminder to everybody, guess who was the person who sued the state successfully? Arizona Center for Law and the Public Interest. So
we had them on recently. Love them.
Oh, okay,
anyway,
cool. Okay.
Sorry. I just got to give a plug back in.
There we go. Yeah. So that was intended to settle that lawsuit, but they knew that we couldn't just in 10 years from now, it was to settle a lawsuit. So the intent was to give the window to make adjustments necessary to bake this into the state budget full time. So the thing that makes me really rest at night is the fact that this 300 million that is quote set to go away utilizing the state land trust dollars has been baked into the state's general fund. So K-12 is not going to quote feel a cut because they've been planning for this for 10 years at the budget. But the thing is, this was one of the few opportunities we're going to see in a while for additional funds for K-12 education. So it had a real opportunity to bring additional dollars into K-12 public education classrooms to benefit my kiddos and all of those kiddos out there, by having additional resources necessary for greater student success. So
as a reminder, we're 48th lowest funded in the nation for education funding.
Yeah. So
what's interesting about it is that I saw, there were several Republicans that wanted it tied only basically to teacher salaries. Like every teacher gets 5,000 more. And I don't know anyone that doesn't think teachers should be paid more, but it was completely forgetting all of the support staff and everything else that goes to making a school run and be successful. And how do you thread that needle between, yes, of course, we want to prioritize in-classroom funding. It seems to me, though, that the same people that want to talk about teacher salary and in-classroom funding, like on the SUSD board, for example, are two board members that are very upset that we're cutting assistant principals to have time at the really, really small schools, which again is admin, not classroom. They're the ones putting up the biggest fight about that very thing. How do you deal with that juxtaposition between this is what they're saying, this is what they're trying to legislate, but then on the flip side of it, at the very local level of a board meeting, they're doing the opposite?
Yeah.
Like, how do you have that conversation with somebody that doesn't seem to actually know what they want?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the ultimate sort of frustration on this, because like you hit the nail on the head, nobody is saying that should this funding flow at the local level, it shouldn't, be prioritized for classroom teachers. But there's so many other people within a school, within a district that ensure the success of the student, right? That's always our key factor. And so it's really frustrating no matter which way we communicate all of these fantastic staff that result in a student, successfully moving on to the next grade, graduating from school, enrolling into and becoming a providing member of society, which is all of our goals. It's just like sometimes we fail to forget that important aspect, right? A person in the classroom, of course, is key, but there's so many other keys to a student's success. And, we can even look in the last 20 years, we've just seen such a student need enhanced from a variety of reasons. And that's okay. Our society has changed. We didn't have these back in the day, right? Like there's just so many things that have changed from the last 20 years. But for some reason or another, some folks are really politicizing this with what's sexy, right? Classroom teachers are sexy, but the rest of us are not duped with the fact that it takes a village to ensure a student's success. But I think they're using the sexy line of classroom teachers as the way to include that poison pill of ESA vouchers. That is the poison pill. That is the line that is drawn. I genuinely think there could be some sort of package developed if that wasn't in the mix, but that is in the mix. And the rest of K-12 education is not. That's a non-starter. That's not a helpful addition. In 2015, again, it barely passed. So for us to politicize this barely passed package a decade ago with this very political element, we don't want to put something in the ballot that's going to fail. And part of me, I fear sometimes, no one has said this directly. The proponents that are working on this said they want to get this done. But a small part of me thinks if this fails at the ballot, what they'll say is, see, Arizona want more money for education. They spoke, and that's not true. And that's
unfortunately the narrative will be people don't like our public schools. Our public schools are failing. It's pretty obvious that the voters have spoken. Our public schools aren't working. That's why the vouchers are the magic answer.
Yeah, and that's what makes me sad, right? Because it's students like mine and so many other students that are in that public school system that are going to suffer because of the political decisions of our legislature today.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the politicization of public education, um, I've had some people along the way as I've been advocating through campaigns and stuff for public education. Why is it only Democrats that you've been campaigning for? And it's like, because there hasn't been a pro-public education Republican in my district that is for more funding, anti-val, there hasn't been one since Kate Brophy McGee in the old LD 28, which I didn't live in, but that was what, 15 years ago? Like she was the last kind of one. Is there anybody now in the state legislature who is akin to a Kate Brophy McGee who understands that we need to fund public education, who would vote against vouchers?
Yeah. So I will not give a name, but what I will say is the fact that they are on week number 3 of this deep campaign to get Prop 123 to the ballot in a partisan vote out of the legislature, but have been unsuccessful is telling. It means that we have some brave soldiers that are not out there, out there publicly slamming it, but there are some brave soldiers on the Republican side of the aisle that are very likely going up to their leadership and saying, don't put me in this position.
Okay.
Don't, because I guarantee you, if it does go up on the board for a vote, it will pass. I feel strongly about that. They will feel so compelled from the Republican Party to vote yes, even though their heart and soul probably tells them this is a bad idea. It is unfortunately the politics that we're in front of. But what they're doing is they're going and they're saying, don't put me in this position. Don't put that thing on the board. So I will not say names, but there are some brave soldiers out there that are doing that. And that is why we are on week 3 of an unsuccessful Prop 123 campaign, because of those brave soldiers.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
For those, I think a lot of people on here are very educated as I look at some of the names on this Zoom. But can you help clarify what are the repercussions of tying it to the vouchers and basically, enshrining vouchers in our Constitution? Like what are the repercussions that our schools, our community as a whole will face?
Yeah, I think the biggest fear from a public education standpoint is the budget. Like we already know that the ESA program has usurped an unbelievable amount of money from the state's budget that should really have been focused in public education. And the voucher program is only getting, the hole is getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Give us a rough number on that.
And as you know, when they went to universal vouchers, what we saw, it was really just the families that were already paying for it out of pocket shifting to now getting subsidized by the state. So
in real human terms, children terms, before the expansion, kids that were in military or homeless and in the very few failing schools in Arizona, et cetera, special needs kids, there were approximately 11,000 students receiving a voucher. And today, as of the last quarterly reporting, there is just shy of 75,000. And to give you some idea about Scottsdale Unified School District, which by the way is an A-rated district, so it's not that you don't have a good A school to go to, and it's also one of the more affluent school districts. We have 3,777 students that are receiving vouchers. And there are a few other school districts that send more, but they are
handouts. Can we just call them handouts? Can we call them just welfare for the wealthy tax handouts?
Now, not 100%. There are some students that are SPED that are getting, from Scottsdale that were getting them before.
Yes.
But even with the SPED kids that were getting it before the expansion, what we found through studies was that it was mostly coming from the more affluent, educated areas, because those parents were the ones that had the wherewithal and means to be able to find the program, put forth the application. So it always, even when it was just 11,000 kids, it more benefited wealthier people in Arizona than it did the poor people it was meant and vulnerable it was meant.
Predominantly white. Can I throw that out?
And now it's really, really that way, because more than half of the students receiving vouchers never attended a public school. They were already in private. And now we're just helping pay for the bill.
Yeah. That's our 2 cents on that, Alexis.
No, and I didn't. I haven't seen their proposal to enshrine ESAs, right? That has just always been the capital gossip on that, and I feel strongly that would have happened. But what I'm curious about is what type of accountability mechanisms they would have added, because that's also equally the frustration, is the accountability of the taxpayer dollars, the resources, the spending. There's always been a concept thrown out of some sort of income cap associated with it. There's
Even
no
Texas, Texas is asking that the students provide testing scores to show that they're actually getting when Texas is asking more of people for their voucher than Arizona is, that should be a sign unto you that we're doing this very badly.
And there is certainly no shortage of ways to improve the program. Like truly, there is no shortage of ways to do this responsibly with taxpayer resources, but that's not what's happening. There is a way to do this right and well, and politics has gotten in the way of us being responsible stewards of taxpayer resources. And I don't care what side of the political aisle you are on. I want our state to be good stewards of taxpayer resources. And so that's what's really frustrating is, I just hear certain talking points, and then I just, like we were talking about with your frustration with some of the board members saying one thing, doing another. That's what I hear as well. I hear just so much interest on being good stewards of taxpayer resources. I see these Doge cuts at the federal level. This should be one of the ways that we are good stewards of taxpayer resources. We can find that balance that works to ensure we're being responsible. We're just not.
So when you're behind closed doors, without naming names, and you're having these conversations with people at the state legislature, how do they justify, hey, we're against any sort of a federal loan repayment on people's college loans, but they're okay with my tax dollars going to pay for somebody else's kid's college here in the state, because they get to save and bank their unused voucher money to use towards college? What is their answer for why that's okay?
Yeah. So I haven't had that particular conversation with someone, but what I can say, a lot of times I have conversations on a variety of topics that are that simplistic. They'll say to me, I get it. I agree with you. I just can't vote that way. Like it is just wild now how our legislature, again, I've been doing this for a while, so I've just seen such a crazy shift in doing what's right and looking at me in the eye and say, I know this bill's awful. I agree. This is like a really stupid concept, but sorry, I got to vote for it.
But you look at somebody like Ken Bennett, who steps outside of his party boundaries, like what, twice in however many years, and
that is
them right on out.
What's driving. I think that the Ken, but thank you for bringing him. I just talked to him 2 days ago. Such a fantastic man, really willing to step outside of the box and do what he thinks is right for taxpayer resources, education, best outcomes for Arizonans. And they got that guy out so quickly. So every Republican remembers that, right? And it is okay to me. Being a moderate is what is reflective of most Arizonans. Most Arizonans are just sort of middle ground, want to go to work, come home from work, see society functioning, have access to services, but not pay too much in taxes. But that's just that it is like the biggest offense to be moderate. And I would say to Mr. Bennett all the time, you are not moderate. You are such a conservative man. You're practical. What is wrong with being practical? It is okay to be practical. That is how we get things done. That's how we slowly move the needle in this world. But we are so past that. He is the example to every Republican. I can tell you our LD1 legislators are, they're all fearful for being the next Ken Bennett, such a good person that did the right thing. And he was out so quickly from that party. And they will eat their own so quickly. I see it happen all the time.
By the way, he was super pro voucher, everybody. I'm not trying to give him like a sainthood. Like he and I agree on nothing. I'm just saying that he moved out of his party a couple times. So here's some things that I wonder, do we even have a chance at success at? So let's just stipulate that vouchers are here to stay because this state is red and this is the way it's going to be. What do you think the chances are that we could at least implement some regulations on what they can be used for? For example, we saw the list of purchases that have been made from homeschooling families, where it was a collectible Lego set for $1,200, one set, like a historical collectible set. You know, surely it's not too much to ask, and it's not partisan to say, first of all, I want to make sure that that person didn't go and resell it on eBay and pocket our tax dollars.
Good point.
But number two, like how is that something we can't get through?
Yeah.
And what is the likelihood that we can at least have some guardrails on how those monies are spent?
Yeah. So fun fact to this group, I actually worked at Department of Education way back in the day when the voucher program was first passed. And we were just sort of railing on how to implement this effectively. Again, taxpayer resources being the key. We need to be good stewards. That's what agencies are put in place to do. And I just remember seeing some of the most egregious things. Oh, that was another fun fact. They didn't know where to house this new entity, so they thought, let's house it under the policy development and government relations team. I mean, again, when you're blazing a new trail in the wild, wild west, you don't even know what unit to put it under. So that somehow you're looking at someone who was working on approving and reviewing ESA expenses. That's how wild it was. They didn't have staff, they didn't have resources, they didn't have knowledge. So, hey, let's use like someone who's good at other duties as assigned. So, fun fact to you all. Yeah. But oh my gosh, I'll never forget the $4,000 telescope. That was quite the astronomy lesson, right?
Yeah.
Can you back in the day? Now it's, I think what the reimbursements are 9,000-ish per kid. That was how much the whole parent was getting. So I'm thinking, what is this parent doing? That's essentially their entire year's worth of voucher money for quite the astronomy lesson, right?
Well, I have a good, my best friend homeschooled her 6 kids for a while. So if you've got 6 kids pulling in vouchers, you're not buying that much of curriculum and laptops and stuff. So if you want to buy a piano, you buy a piano, which is how somebody also bought a $7,500 piano using their voucher money. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the state gets it back when the kid's done with their education. Mm-hmm. Like in a public school, we didn't even get textbooks, for God's sakes. And if we did get something that was loaned to us, we had to give it back at the end because it was owned by the taxpayers. We didn't get to keep stuff. My kid's 4-time state swim champ. She didn't even have her parka from Shap High School. Like you had to turn it in at the end of the season. Like, yeah. But they get to keep their stuff, their laptops, everything that they buy. How is that okay?
I mean, I think that's the million-dollar question is some people feel really strongly that it is, and some people don't. And, there are ways to do this. We just choose not to. And I think it's opening Pandora's box for a lot of members, right? There are legislators, again, that I think know that this program is getting a little out of control. Those the people behind the scenes that are fighting to ensure it doesn't get on it. I think in their hearts and souls, they know this is getting a little out of control, both in the spending aspect as well, like spending what parents are spending, as well as how much of our budget it's taking. So I'm certainly seeing that, but there's also this probably in the back of their mind, the second we open Pandora's box and start to fix the program, it's going to go wild. And they're probably looking at sort of the charter school system as well. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the charters were put in place, it was supposed to be that real like autonomy mechanism. And flash forward to today, now it's certainly no comparison to the amount of bureaucracy that traditional public schools have to go through. But charter schools have, I mean, every time a bill runs now, it's school districts and charter schools, right? So they have all of these additional layers to all of these reports, all of these new requirements. And so I'm sure in the back of most minds, it's let's not develop a program like the next charter program, because they never expected charters to have this many administrative layers and this many
So, but even with all
bureaucracy.
those layers, like I don't know any superintendents or any admin of any kind, anybody working in the public school system who ends up multi-millionaires, like you have as the owners of Basis, Primavera, Great Hearts, and was it Eddie Farnsworth? He was in the state legislature voting on bills that affected his charter school. Was it like the Ben Franklin School charter schools? I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah, I don't
The guy
remember.
sold it for like $13 million. And
Profit.
he's the one that like
Taxpayers.
voted
Taxpayers
on
paid
the
for that.
rule that said he was allowed to make that kind of money. Like
Yeah.
it to me, it feels like a giant grift.
Yeah.
Oh, huge.
In
Huge.
comparison to this STOs, the what is it, school tuition organization, where you can give your money for, it's almost like a semi-voucher program for
The
tax
tax credits that you can give to.
the tax credits
Yeah.
for
The
private
money has to go through the STO.
STO, and that's what I'm getting at. Somehow, some of our clever legislators, no longer there anymore, but conveniently had STOs. And what you could do with an STO is you can shave 10% off for administrative purposes. So we see it, I mean, we see it happen all too often, a lot of conflicts of interest. I will say that.
I want to talk about a few other things, but and I know we only have a little bit more time with you before you have to run off to a client meeting, but can you talk to us about what we can be doing? Is calling our legislatures the number one thing we can be doing? What if we feel our legislator is good to go and we don't need to call that specific one, which isn't necessarily true for us, of course. And there's lots of people on here. Majority are going to be from Scottsdale. So our legislators.
I think the reason why we really want to ask you this is that I know that Shay has had this experience. I definitely have, where we've made appointments with our representatives of like the old LD23 and now LD3 and LD4. You can drive all the way down there. You have an appointment time, and then they just don't show up for their appointment because you're just some random mom. They don't care. Would it be helpful if like I was able to convince like the board of Chaparral High School, the parent board, to make an appointment with our reps to go down and talk about how these things are impacting? Would that be helpful? Do you think that would move the needle at all if more and more groups sort of got together and made appointments?
Yeah. So I 100% think any level of advocacy from you all is going to be the most effective way to move someone, right? I'm a lobbyist. They hear from me all the time, right? They will take my information, you know, some more than others, but they will take my information. But at the end of the day, like
they know they're getting reelected. Why listen to you?
Yeah. So, but having you all send emails, I am a constituent in legislative district 3, 4, whatever. I feel like this. I'd like to see you vote on this. Those types of emails, again, it could go one ear out the other, but enough volume gets them thinking. I will say legislative district 4 specifically is the hot district, right? That is the district on the chopping block. And those members know that, you know, one mistake could result in their reelection, and one mistake.
You see on the chopping block because it's very, very competitive.
Yes, it is incredibly competitive.
School board member, Corinne Werner, she actually is, of course, our state senator now and sits on the education committee appointed by Gress, who's in our house. Yeah, which is hilarious considering Werner has no college education.
So I feel like Matt has absolutely gone further and further right this term than he was in the past, as though like it in a bizarre kind of a way, like that I was like, oh, he's setting himself, he thinks he's going to lose next cycle, so he's setting himself up for a job in the school privatization movement. Like literally, that's how I was reading.
You don't have to respond on that, Alexis. I'm sure it wouldn't serve you
well.
well.
No, but I mean, like his decisions are not at all moderate. now.
Well,
Now
I'd
he
say
seems to be fully in that camp.
yeah, he is the face of Prop 123. So he is the House member tasked with the Prop 123 continuation in the House. Mr. Mesnard, who's based out of Chandler, is the face for the Senate. And the two of them have been tasked with figuring something out that makes it work. And the fact
But
that
that also means that he is the one who is supporting putting in the vouchers into Prop 123.
that's kind of
Yes.
what I'm getting at is there is no shortage of people approaching him saying, please don't do this. Please just pass a clean Prop 123 continuation. I have been in his office asking that. We have had stakeholder meetings with a variety of education stakeholders asking that question. It seems to be the ESA enshrinement in the Constitution seems to be the ship that's already sailed from him. And it's really disappointing because I just feel really strongly there's such a good opportunity here to have a fantastic outcome for Arizona with a really clean renewal. Just continue utilizing instead of the 2.5% our Constitution allows us to pull out of state land trust. We have seen throughout history that state land trust is performing fantastically. So there is no reason that they can't clean continue what we've had the last 10 years that's been working at the 6.9% of the state land trust while continuing to protect the intent of that state land trust, which is education funding in perpetuity. So all economists suggest that we can pull these additional dollars out in perpetuity and do it in a clean renewal way. But instead, it's becoming this political football with all of this new processes. And that's been my conversation as well with many legislators on both sides of the aisle. Like, we are overcomplicating this by them developing this whole new formula for pay and all of this additional reporting. We have formulas. We have reporting mechanisms already. For them to create yet another one is just such a disservice to
Where my disconnect comes in, Alexis, is that Matt has this perfect opportunity to be like, I got a big win for education. In the same way that Kate Brophy McGee, I'm a Democrat through and through, but like, I like Kate. Like, I've always liked her. I'm a fan. Like, she's a reasonable, nice lady. We don't agree on everything, but like, you can have a conversation with her. And he could have been the next Kate Brophy McGee, and instead he's chosen this other side. And I'm like, how does that play in your moderate district? Are you getting different polling data than I am that it's definitely not a toss-up anymore?
You say moderate, but at the same time, I thought it was our district that pulls the most number of vouchers. Isn't
Oh, well, we are because we have the most. Well, we don't have the most. We have the most percentage-wise. Well, technically, Colorado City, where the Mormon kids are homeschooled. But we have the highest, like, of the larger cities and stuff, we have the highest amount here. But that's just because we have that many kids that go to, think about half my friends sent their kids to Brophy or Phoenix Country Day and stuff. Now they just get an extra 7 to 8, 9.
Can we believe he's pleasing his donor base? I mean, his donors are the ones with the money that send kids to private schools. And someone wanted to ask, and I'll give a shout out to Scottsdale Parent Council, which is a great organization. That's actually how I met you first, Alexis. And it's in a way, I don't want to call it the PTO of the whole district because it's really not, but it meets on a monthly basis, always has the first 5-10 minutes with Dr. Menzel, and they bring in different people to talk about things happening in the district. And that's where Alexis was out. And so that was wonderful. I know that there's a couple other bills and we only have 4 more minutes here with you, maybe even less. If you need to jump off, Alexis, you tell us what other bills, because what I found when you presented at Scottsdale Parent Council, it blew my mind how many bills they're out that look like it's in to support to make our schools better, or to protect our schools and make them more safe. But really, in so many ways, it's really to put more expenses on public schools that aren't expected on private schools. Is there any that you want to chat with us about certain bills that are just like mind-boggling that it's going to have the consequences for us, but the private schools and the religious private schools don't have to maintain the same credibility?
Yeah. I will say, because of the divide of our governments with the Republican-led House and Senate and the Democrat governor, we continue to see a historic number of vetoes as a result of what's being sent up to her and her feeling strongly that that's not the right direction for Arizona. And
Give us
so
an example of one that we just like, holy cow, thank God we have Hobbs, because had it not, that would have been insane if it actually passed. Thank God we had the veto power. Can you give us one?
let me think about an education bill that was vetoed. There was one recently dealing, just in the public education space. It was legislation sponsored by Senator Warner, and it had really prescriptive deadlines in getting information to board members. And there was a lot of concerns brought up, and it was testified in committee as well about FERPA violations and also personnel violations. There is a need to know basis for some of this information. It was, I think, House Bill 2067 was the piece of legislation I'm referring to. But again,
What's the
information to
pronoun
governing
bill?
board members to
Someone
make
mentioned the pronoun bill. Do you know?
the pronoun bill. Yeah, that was Mr. Kavanaugh's in LD3. He's
Every session, he's got to put up 2 or 3.
run it. I was just going to say he's
Every
ran
session.
a single session on pronouns used in public settings and in public education. So, male is a male, kind of defining what all of this is.
Can't use the
Some
term
of
they. Yeah.
the bathroom bills, like developing a very prescriptive process for how public settings have bathrooms for male, female, and then
Does
non-identified.
that every year.
Again, these are bills that under, this new dynamic of the legislature are so just, I call it veto fodder. That might be a little flippant, so sorry, but you just you see it, you know what it is, and honestly, nobody even gives it attention anymore because it's going to get up and not be signed.
And if you look at it and you look back to the still held Republican majority legislature under Ducey, if they didn't send this ridiculous stuff to him when they had full control of both sides of the legislature and the governor's office, but they're sending it to Katie, it's all just a political point.
Absolutely. I'm going to stop us here because I know that Alexis is supposed to be on with a client in exactly 2 minutes. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. We are so grateful for what you do, the advocacy, and you sticking it in. We just are, what would we do without people like you? So
Thank you.
grateful.
Yeah. And I just, again, want to reiterate my point on hearing from you all is the most effective way. And yes, going down to the Capitol and setting meetings, I'm sorry if they choose to not show up, but that just gives you more grit to make sure that you get somebody in there that will show up for those meetings.
To be fair, they don't care for me. So.
Come and testify, right? Come and testify. Write an op-ed.
Well,
I mean, there's no shortage.
Someone was mentioning that's what really got to one Republican and shifted the needle was a special needs child that got to the heart of a Republican. And so there are cases.
There's so many avenues to activate, but they want to hear from you. It is so much more influential to hear from you than me as a lobbyist. So, if you are compelled to activate, connect with Shay and Jennifer, and they can help get you connected with me, and we can find the right way to do that, whether it's you coming to testify in committee, you writing emails to either your legislature or all legislators, right? There is so many ways, but if you are empowered to do so, let's make it happen, because that's going to really make the most change in my perspective. So, but I appreciate the opportunity. Please feel free, Shay and Jennifer, to share my cell phone number for text messages, my email, if you guys have any emails, or hey, I'm hearing this. I'm really, really happy to be a resource to anyone, because I believe in your types of groups. I believe in what you're doing to help empower people to participate in this important process. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alexis. You have a wonderful day. Appreciate your time.
Bye all.
Well, we're going to stay on still. We have another 15 minutes.
So I want to give an idea out to the group, because if I'd known then what I know now, this was maybe 14 years ago, I had contacted Senator John Kavanaugh at the time he was in the Senate, because he flips back and forth because he gets termed out. And he's LD3, so that would be like the DM schools, Desert Mountain, Anasazi. At any rate, I had invited him to Cochise Elementary to come see how many kids were in my daughter's first grade classroom, which was 28, with no paid aid. So I wanted him to see like what that was like to handle that. He, of course, did not come. Now, politically savvy Jennifer now would then write an email saying it was off session, it's 10 minutes from his house, he refused to show up and like really look at the problem at our invitation. It was a group of moms, and I would have made a bigger deal about it instead of just complaining about it. I really think that that might be effective as soon as this legislative session is over, which could be the hoary end of the legislative session here in June because they haven't even started on the budget yet. But you know, maybe in the fall, you guys, they're not in session. They have no excuse to not come. If you could get 5 moms from every single school to invite your reps to the school to talk about issues at your school and how these things are, their decisions are impacting it. If they don't show up, then the 5 of you can write the op-ed saying, this is what we expected. This is what we wanted to do. It's kind of like an add-on to our David Schweikert, where are you? You're not showing up. It's a way to show how they don't show up and they don't answer to our things. And I think that that would be a really easy, impactful protest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great idea. Wonderful idea.
Who wants to organize that? Who wants to get a hold of somebody at all the different schools?
I know I'm going to glance through to see if we have a raise of hands. No raise of hands just yet. But
it was easy back when I was on the board of Scottsdale Parent Council because you knew somebody at all the schools. But y'all, I'm old. I've been out. So try and find somebody on SPC that can maybe get you connected.
Yeah. Can we speak for a moment, because we've been talking so much about Matt Gress, and I do know we have a couple of people on here with special needs students. Can we talk about the Roar recall? Are you savvy on that at all? Are you, the Roar recall is Reclaim Our Representatives, Arizona Representatives, and it is a grassroots movement really started by parents and caregivers of special needs students that are not just students, all special needs, but they qualify for DDD, which is states funded due to disability. And Matt Gress has really been after attacking funding for our disabled community members. And so these parents are speaking up, and they're really pushing for a recall of, I believe it's 4 representatives. Yep. And
it was specifically about like paying for like the parent who can't work anymore, and so they're home being the caretaker. And I talked to a couple of friends that have special needs kids, and I said, you know, what's the process for doing this? And they said, oh, I wouldn't even bother. Like, yes, it would be some money in my pocket, but not enough to make it worth my time. So people who are applying for this, they have to jump through hoops, not like getting a voucher. Like there is a lot of steps and a lot of paperwork before you can even get accepted into getting this payment. And Matt Gress was one of the main architects of saying, we don't want to do this anymore, basically.
Yeah. So I know that if any of you are going to be coming to our happy hour, which is on the 12th of June, it's usually the first Saturday, but the very first Thursday of the month. We're scooting it to the 2nd because I'll be out of town. Many of us will be out of town for the summer and such. So, but we will definitely have the recall petitions there for you to sign and also take and gather signatures. If you're interested in that, we would love that for sure.
And it's important to note for everybody that recalls are generally unsuccessful. They usually don't work because even if you recall him, then you still have to have an election and you still may lose to another Republican. Like you may not change anything, except here's what you do change. This is why they are important. You get to, while you're getting signatures to recall Matt Gress, you get to have conversations with people in LD4 about why you're doing that. The fact that he wanted to tie unregulated grift of our tax dollars, vouchers into the Prop 123 funding of schools. You get to talk about all of these disastrous votes and decisions that he's making. So even if it doesn't actually recall him, you've had one more conversation with a voter.
It's a great campaign tool. A great campaign tool.
So it helps whoever ends up running against him in 2026.
100%. Absolutely. Agree.
It'd be huge. It'd be the #1 thing I'd be working on right now.
If you're up here, really, that'd be your number one.
If I were there, that would be and you know me, I hate knocking on doors and talking to strangers, but I would be doing that because I think it's that effective. When we're in the midst of a campaign cycle, y'all know this, you're getting 8 mailers a day. You're getting all these texts and emails and everybody asking for money, and it's just a constant deluge of information. Right now, yes, those of us who have had the misfortune of donating in the past to, especially if you donate to somebody outside of your state, you're on everybody's list. So you're still getting texts and stuff, but it's not that constant campaign cycle kind of noise that's going on. So this is the time that you can really influence voters in a different way than you can during the actual official campaign season. It'd be
Agreed.
huge.
Wonderful.
I'd be shit talking Corinne Warner the entire time I was doing it, getting signatures for Matt.
Of course. Farron Travis says she'll be happy to help support a fun day of door knocking together and supporting this effort. So that'd be great. Thank you, Farron. We appreciate you.
That would be, again, I always recommend that if you're going to canvass or go anywhere outside of like the library steps, go with a buddy. You guys don't let somebody tell you, oh, we have people go and knock on doors solo. They shouldn't. Nobody should do that. You know, take somebody else, but you don't have to knock doors. You can go someplace in LD4, go down to a cool restaurant with a mister and hang out there. There are several businesses that are pro public education. And I bet you Beth Lewis from Save Our Schools would give you a list of places where they've been able to collect signatures so that they'd be amenable to you being there. Also Planned Parenthood, if those businesses let you collect signatures for that, the abortion initiative, chances are they'll let you collect signatures there against Matt Gress. So there's lots of places where you can go where you don't have to knock on doors. You can just let the public come to you and have a drink while you're doing it.
Jennifer, you're full of so many good ideas.
I really am.
Wow, that's why
I should just run everything.
Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great? Speaking of running of things, do we get to, well, we maybe shouldn't bring it up right now, but Jennifer and I are working on a new project together. Very excited. We are, are we not supposed to say anything yet? I see your
No, we can say something, but we're starting a super PAC.
Yeah. So there'll be more details to come about that.
Yeah. It's been a dream for a long time. You know, a decade of working on individual campaigns and thinking, wow, if it was just my call and I didn't have to convince, 8 different people of something, this is what I would do. Well, if we do our own super PAC, then I can have a little fun with it and I can poke a bear and I can
we like poking bears. Now
we
remember,
can poke a bear.
It's a political action committee.
Yeah.
Can you give it a little bit more detail, Jennifer, about
basically a super PAC is different than a regular PAC. We get to raise as much money as we want and we get to spend as much money as we want on any particular issue, candidate, for or against. So I think primarily right now, the thought is that we would be working on CD1. And CD1 is your congressional district there. The key there is that since I've ever lived there, so I don't know how long it's been, we've had anywhere between 2 and 10 candidates running in the Democratic primary in CD1. It used to be CD6, but let's pretend it's always been CD1.
Don't confuse us.
Yeah. So, and several of those have been somewhat closer primaries, but what happens when you have a primary, which is good, you get some press and people talk about it, but at the same time, the people duking it out in the primary are trying to differentiate themselves from one another so that they can win the primary to move on in the general. Well, our primary gets held in July. So you have between July and the first week of October when early ballots drop to make your case against David Schweikert. It's not very long.
So it's all that at the time. You're spending a solid year and a half focused on possibly, either building up your name, but also attacking the other Democrats. It's what we call dim on dim crime. And then you have this very short period of time for you to shift your focus, become the nominee and the Democratic
Everybody
nominee.
Get on board with whoever won the primary because we all have our different people that we back. So then now you've got to change your allegiance.
We were Connor O'Callaghan supporters, true.
Right or die.
All the way through. So when Amish Shaw won, it's pretty hard for us to suddenly switch. And after we'd not been a fan and to suddenly switch. And so those efforts, what we see, what is the point of that? Why don't we just support whoever makes it past the primary? And we're going to spend an entire year in advance going after Schweikert and really messaging.
That's the idea, is that we raise the money, and the last primary, this is going to discuss to you guys in CD1, if you average out what the candidates raised and how many people voted, it came out to about $1,000 a vote. That's about the cost of our last primary in 2024. And I know that number is appalling, right?
It is.
So instead of giving in the primary to your favorite person who might or might not win, why not give to a super PAC that is solely focused on actually going after Schweikert? And unlike other super PACs, there's super PACs. There's a million super PACs, you guys. Most of them are like these little mom and pop BS ones that raised $1,000 total. That is a vast majority of super PACs, believe it or not. Then you have some that are actually like millions and millions and millions of dollars, like Stand for Children, for example, that gave in the SUSD school board race. They supposedly gave our three candidates $49,000 apiece. But if I add up what they actually did, like what they spent on mailers and ads, they spent less than $25,000 total. The rest of that was
All
admin.
three together.
Yeah. The rest of that was admin costs. So over $120,000 of what they said they spent on our race was actually just like their overhead, because they're out of like Washington, not DC, actually the state of Washington, and they hire a consultant and nobody is from here.
We're
We've
out of our
never
kitchen
had a
campus.
super PAC that actually lived in the district, knows the district, has run races in the district, knows the demographics cold, who actually can raise an effective amount of money at the same time. So Shay and I have been talking about this for these many years now. And we're going to partner up with Matters of State. That's the campaign team for Adrian Fontes. And we're going to do this. And we're, once again, working for free. So there ain't going to be the big old overhead costs.
Well, there
And we know the area, and we're going to actually spend this money to go attack Schweikert. Like one of the ideas that we had, which we think is funny, is like if gas prices go up, we go and stick out those little stickers with Schweikert on it that says, I did that, and stick those around town. Because we also, here's another thing that other super PACs with actual funding don't have. They don't have an army of volunteers that they've worked with over the years that can help get some of this stuff done. So we're talking guerrilla warfare, we're talking fun, we're talking fast, we're talking like hit them where it's at and really get the word out. And along those lines, Matt Gress recall, that's guerrilla warfare, you guys. That's getting in there and making it happen in a different way. And I highly, highly recommend you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are just about out of time. I thank you guys all so much for coming. I know we have 2 more minutes left, but I think we've just about hit all the subjects we could. Go for it.
We put it in the newsletter, and I want to reiterate to people, I have ghostwritten, I cannot tell you how many op-eds that you've read over the years. I have topics for you to write about, anything from city council to what Matt Gress is doing to national, whatever you want. If you have a topic, I will help you with writing it. I will write it with you. I will do whatever. I've got reporters that you can send it to. But we do need people. I can't submit, you guys. I couldn't if I wanted to. I don't live there anymore. So I need people that want to speak to some things, and I will help you craft this. If we had an op-ed going out once a week, which is completely doable, we could actually change some thinking on people. So please, 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 let's get on this. Plus, it's good exercise for you and a good example to your children that you're practicing your writing.
Good point. Good point. Oh, thank you all so much for being on, Jennifer. I love having you with me. You are the best co-host I could possibly ask for.
Let's do it.
You guys, we will be on again in the future. Well, of course, every second and fourth Thursday of the month is when we have our Zoom. So do me a favor, just go ahead and put it in your calendar every second and fourth Thursday. And then typically every first Thursday is our happy hour, with the exception of our summertime could shift around a little bit because of vacations and such. So thanks you guys so much. Talk to you soon. See you next time.